It is just after dawn on June 8th, 1931. A cold, thick Atlantic mist is rolling over the sand at Long Beach, New York. A local beachcomber is walking along the shoreline, watching the gray waves crash against the coast. Suddenly, the tide pulls back, leaving something behind on the wet sand. He stops dead in his tracks. At first, it looks like a discarded mannequin from a high-end Manhattan boutique. But as he steps closer, his heart drops. It is the body of a young woman. She is impeccably dressed in a fine silk dress, wearing expensive jewelry, and her face is completely unmarred, looking almost as if she is simply asleep. This is the final chapter in the spectacular, tragic life of Starr Faithful. She was 25 years old, staggeringly beautiful, and one of the most prominent, glamorous fixtures of the wealthy New York socialite scene. To the public who tracked her in the daily high society columns, Starr lived a life of pure jazz-age luxury, sailing on massive ocean liners, attending exclusive high-stakes parties, and moving through the elite circles of Manhattan like a bright star. But as the local authorities arrived on that misty beach, they quickly realized that the pristine, glamorous facade of Starr's life masked a dark, psychological abyss. The initial medical examiner noted that her lungs were filled with salt water, but there were no signs of a struggle, no tears in her fine clothing, and absolutely no explanation for how a wealthy city girl ended up washed ashore on a lonely beach, completely untraceable to any known boating accident. Within 24 hours of the discovery, the New York police swarmed the upscale Greenwich Village apartment where Starr lived with her mother and stepfather. The initial theory was simple: a tragic, accidental drowning during a late-night luxury yacht party. But as detectives began tossing the room, looking for any clue to her final movements, they pried open a hidden compartment in her writing desk. Inside, they found a collection of locked, leather-bound diaries. When they broke the small metal clasps, the glamorous myth of Starr Faithful evaporated instantly. The pages were filled with a frantic, deeply troubled handwriting that spanned over a decade. Starr hadn't been living a dream. She had been trapped inside a waking nightmare. The diaries detailed a systematic, multi-year pattern of profound psychological manipulation and abuse inflicted upon her since she was a young girl by a wealthy, incredibly powerful older benefactor. This benefactor was an elite public figure, a man with deep political ties stretching directly into the highest echelons of New York's legal and political system. Suddenly, this wasn't a standard, tragic accident anymore. It was a massive, highly explosive liability. The diaries proved that Starr was on the verge of exposing everything, planning to publish her story to clear her conscience, giving the most powerful men in the city a multi-million-dollar motive to make sure she went silent forever. As the contents of the diaries leaked to the frantic tabloid printing presses, the investigation hit a massive, invisible brick wall. The name written across the hidden pages belonged to Andrew Peters, a wealthy, prominent former politician and a man with absolute immunity within the city's high society grid. Detectives who wanted to push the investigation forward were suddenly, aggressively reassigned or told to focus their efforts elsewhere. The institutional machinery of the city was actively closing ranks. But independent investigators and journalists refused to let the trail go cold. They began piecing together Starr's final, erratic timeline. Just days before her body washed ashore, she had been spotted boarding the luxury ocean liner Franconia, supposedly to say goodbye to a friend. Witnesses recalled seeing her looking intensely anxious, pacing the decks, and holding a small envelope. She never officially checked in as a passenger, yet her footprints completely vanished from the ship before it cleared the harbor. Did she jump into the black harbor waters out of sheer despair, or was she quietly escorted off that vessel by individuals hired to protect a political legacy? The official Coast Guard record from that week showed strange, unverified small craft movements near the shipping lanes, movements that were abruptly scrubbed from the final public inquiry logs. The breaking point of the mystery came when the official autopsy filings were finally processed by the county coroner. This is where the case transitions from a suspicious drowning into an undeniable, highly calculated cover-up. The medical examiner's report was a complete maze of absolute contradiction. On page 1, the cause of death was listed as simple drowning due to an accidental fall. But as you read further into the raw internal findings, a terrifying reality emerged. Starr's system contained a staggering, lethal dose of a powerful sedative, luminol. It was an amount so high that she would have been completely unconscious, physically unable to walk, let alone jump from a ship or wander onto a beach by herself. Furthermore, microscopic analysis of her throat and skin revealed faint, localized bruising that strongly suggested she had been forcefully held down while the drugs were administered. The evidence screamed homicide, but within 48 hours of these findings being logged, a high-ranking judicial official stepped in, seized the raw forensic samples, and officially closed the medical inquiry, declaring the death a suicide by drowning due to psychological instability. The truth was systematically buried in a vault of bureaucracy. Today, nearly a century later, the mysterious death of Starr Faithful remains an open, unyielding void in the archives of American crime history. Because the tragedy occurred in 1931, the original suspects, the corrupt politicians, and the witnesses have all faded into the soil, carrying the absolute, final answers straight to their graves. Starr's story serves as a profoundly dark, cautionary tale about the sheer, destructive power of unchecked wealth and political corruption. She was a brilliant, elegant young woman who tried to use her voice to reclaim her life from the monsters in her past, but the very system designed to protect her chose instead to erase her to save themselves. By pulling her diaries out of the old archives and speaking her name in our digital spaces, we ensure that her humanity is preserved and that the shadows of high society can never fully obscure the real-world horror they created. The tide eventually washes everything away, but the truth has a strange, unbendable way of refusing to stay buried. I want to hear from you guys on this. Do you believe Starr was forcefully silenced on that luxury liner to protect a political dynasty? Or did the psychological weight of her past drive her to make a tragic choice in the dark? Let's start a meaningful conversation down in the comments below, and please keep the discussion deeply respectful of Starr's memory. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, look out for one another, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. Bye.